and welcome to Stephen University. This week we'll be discussing Reunited, a quite frankly uninteresting, boring, nothing happened. I mean
hardly anything happened.
Filler. I mean, we've talked in the past about quite enjoying the Townie episodes, Chris, but this one had tons of them in it, and they didn't say anything. Like, what happened? Honestly, it might as well have not existed. This was like 20 minutes of silence, or static on the TV. Absolute waste of time. Should we just skip this one and talk about next week's instead?
I mean, do you think it's the ultimate episode of this show?
It
feels like a reward from the creators.
It really does. It's
I mean?
everything you could possibly want from an episode of Steven Universe. To the point when they announced the movie, I was like, really? Now? Didn't you just do it? Like, this feels like Steven Universe the movie. Like, they went, we'll give him a song, we'll give him some great comedy, and then we'll throw a bunch of action, and then we'll throw a bunch of mythology in there. Like, they could not have given me any more.
We got the Avengers lineup. We got fucking Lapis returning.
It's nuts.
It's crazy, man.
When I watched this episode, me and Nadia were like, you know what it was akin to, and I'm not intentionally continuing to draw a comparison we've already drawn, but I remember when I went to see the first Avengers in a cinema with a crowd, opening night. In fact, it was a midnight screening, so it was like the very first possible showing we could legally do, based on the release date. And it was like a religious experience because everyone was just screaming and shouting and cheering and laughing in unison. It was chaos. You know, the Hulk like grabs Iron Man and as he jumps through the air, and everyone's just going, yeah. You know, he grabs Loki and he tosses him around, and everyone's just like cheering, woo, yeah. Like the whole movie was just like a Comic-Con thing, but for an hour and a half. It was incredible. Not maybe the best way to experience the movie from a sort of like an artistic perspective, but I cannot tell you how much fun that last act of that movie was like that. It was a little bit like that watching this. It was me and Nadia sat in our living room on a Saturday morning. We were both sort of like, if memory serves, it might have been the night out. We might have been a day after we'd been out the night before, so I think we were slightly hungover, if memory serves. And we were just all a bit slow when we started watching it. But by the time we were on this episode, Jesus Christ, we were jumping out of our seats, we were cheering, we were high-fiving, we were laughing. It was incredible. And the closest experience I can think of to that was when I first saw the first Avengers. So that lineup comparison is actually a lot closer than even I initially would have assumed, because it's not just that element of it. It's literally like a tick box of things. It was a reward. It was like they knew how long we'd waited for a lot of this stuff. And this was it. This is the culmination of like 3-4 years worth of work. 150 episodes, and this is the bone. This is the reward for that. It's stunning. So many payoffs in this episode. It's hard to even know where to start.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the song, I guess. So this is obviously a two-parter. We'll try best we can to stick to discussion of the first part in the first part and the second part in the second part, but we might go all over the place.
I was going to say, I think what we'll do is we'll just generally discuss but what we'll do is we'll split this in. So we'll have a general discussion as if it's all going to be one episode, and then I'll split it somewhere in the middle. I'll find like an edit point.
Yeah, because we like our episodes to line up with the production codes of the show, and the production codes of the show has this as 2, so we're going to have it as 2. So you're going to get this part
151 and 152
today, Friday, and then you'll get the next part tomorrow, Saturday. So I mean, the song is a great way of sort of touching base with each character and seeing where they are and how they're dealing with the news. And it was, or how they're dealing, like in the case of, say, Peridot, how, she's not really dealing with the rose quartz stuff, but she's still dealing with the lapis stuff. And it's a great way to sort of, not only is it a great song and a catchy song, but it's a great way of sort of subtly addressing the Stephen of it all as well. Like, he keeps getting dragged to there. He keeps getting dragged to that place, but he just wants to kind of ignore it for today. And, at some point he's going to have to address that stuff. And yeah, I thought particularly the Pearl scene, because we've not really, whilst we kind of dealt with Pearl in the episode with Pearl and Sapphire, that was kind of more about the basics of what happened and the Sapphire. We've not really done Pearl much. Even a single pale rose is essentially the beats of what happened. and Pearl's guilt.
A little, but we do deal a fair bit with her like guilt in that episode. Because he has to go through the different layers of her brain, doesn't he? He doesn't just go into her head and get the story. There's the different layers, and each one tells us a little bit more about how Pearl feels about not just Rose, but the whole situation. So I don't think it's you're pretty much there. Like what you're saying, I pretty much agree with. But I do think it's a little unfair to say we haven't had any Pearl. We've maybe not had as much as we've had of the other characters since the reveal. But I think we've had a justifiable amount of Pearl. But this moment certainly helps in the song, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I love the song. What did you love a song? I love the song.
This might be one of the greatest songs they've ever put on the show. I think to basically create a song that is not only brilliant, and not only checks in with each of the characters and all the different things that Stephen could be worrying about, but this song encapsulates the entire ethos of the show. For just one day, let's only think about love. Like, it's wonderful on so many levels. It's visually well done. The lyrics are beautiful. I mean, Zach Callison's falsetto is ridiculous. I mean, give him an award of some sort.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's incredible. This song is probably one of the best songs they've ever produced for the show. And I tell you what, now I need a second vinyl with all the music from the since the end of the first vinyl.
It's probably not enough to justify it, though, is there?
Not currently, no. But I suspect the second vinyl would probably come towards the end of the show when they'd have collected enough songs to maybe do that. We've had a fair few though, because we've had we've had Sadie Killer, Sadie and the Sadie Killer and the Suspect songs. Plus there was Lapis's song. Plus there was Ruby Rider. And now this. So they're certainly collecting enough songs to start to think about maybe putting together another album. But I would, we know there's a song coming called Escapism, because Rebecca Sugar played that on the official Steven Universe podcast like a year ago, and it's not yet appeared in an episode. At some point, maybe if they haven't released any more episodes and we're looking for hiatus content, maybe I'll play that song and we can do a little 5-10 minute video where we quickly talk about that, because there's a lot of speculation as to who that song's perspective is. But talking about this particular song, like it's so beautifully done, checking in with all the characters. Obviously we have Pearl showing this sort of guilt, but Stephen looking at the bright side of it and saying, well, now it's all out in the open, we can be a lot happier about it. It's probably healthy that we've put it out there so we can discuss it, which again we're looking at the ethos of the show here, which is to talk about your issues. Talking to Bismuth, and I love that Bismuth is wearing the armor. It's the nicest thing Bismuth owns. It's beautiful. Amethyst having all these doubts because, we've chosen roses. That might be a little controversial. Then you go to Peridot, and she's sad because she's missing Lapis. And there's that line, the friends, missing the friends we wish we were inviting, and it's like, it's beautiful. And then a little name check of the cluster just to remind you it's there, because obviously that plays a part later in the episode. Like, this song does so many things on so many levels. And then it ends with that beautiful, all of them coming together and singing For Just One Day, Let's Only Think About Love, and Stephen leaping into the air and just floating down as he sings the final note. It's perfect. It's beautifully animated. It feels epic. It does feel like the sort of thing you'd open a movie with. It's stunning. It's so good. It's a really, like, it starts and you just know you're in for something special, like with the entire episode. And the episode is, although, because I even checked, and it's 8 minutes they appear, so it's not so cut. It's not quite cut like this. But essentially, if this is two parts, it's the wedding and the battle. And the wedding is just so joyous, like just all the little touches, and like I never thought I'd say this about a cartoon character, but Ruby looks beautiful in particular, like in the wedding dress. Mm-hmm. I thought I've never thought that, like, apart from with Pearl and Lapis obviously, but like I was really like, oh wow, Ruby looks beautiful. Like I thought they did such a good job with the animations and making the wedding feel so real. I kind of wish Sapphire had Ruby's ring and Ruby had Sapphire's, like the bands swapped round. But that's not a real issue. Wait, sorry, I didn't quite. The line broke up a little bit there. Are you saying you wish they'd swapped the outfits round?
No. The rings. I wish that Ruby took Sapphire's ring and Sapphire took Ruby's. So one got the fire, one got the water, but it was the other way around.
I thought that too. So they were a ring that reminded them of each other. That occurred to me too.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been nicer, but we can't have it all.
No, and I think I imagine was a lot made of the outfits then.
So the outfit thing is a work of genius on the part of the
it's
creative
fantastic because the notion is it goes against what you assume is the stereotype. So Ruby's always been the fiery one and always been was the cowboy in the last episode, and she asked the question, so you assume she's going to be in a suit, but Sapphire is and stuff.
I think the intention is that like Ruby presents of the two of them the most traditionally male. Shorter hair, quite sort of tough, sort of like fiery, as you said. Like I don't know, if you're going by stereotypes, Ruby certainly seems the most male. And what's kind of brilliant about what they've done here is, in certain countries that censor this show, they have gotten around Ruby and Sapphire by making Ruby male. I can't wait for them to get to this episode in Russia.
Yeah.
Because this, honestly, while it is the perfect way to do it, and I wouldn't have done it any other way for any other reason, I do also love the subtext of Rebecca Sugar being like, you want to make Ruby male? Well, Ruby's in the wedding dress. Suck on that, Russia. Yeah, I'm sure that's not 100% what she was going for. I do think that was the cleverest way to do it, and Sapphire looked great in the suit, like, and especially when they reformed Garnet, the sort of half wedding dress, half tuxedo, looked amazing.
Yeah, so is she going to be in that going forward, do we think, or?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a bit like when Stephen and Connie fuse, their outfit merges. Yeah, I think that they'll at some point change back into their more traditional outfit. I don't think that would be a crazy permanent look to have. It's an awesome look, but it's clearly, they're wearing their Sunday best, as it were. And so while we're on that subject, I thought it was adorable. They put Peridot in like a little green dress, or a little yellow dress, maybe green.
Yeah, she looked very cute as well. Yeah,
it was yellow, which I thought was appropriate because, of course, she used to belong to yellow.
Again, this episode is full of that. It's full of subtle things that remind you of the context, like putting her in yellow, and then like all the subtext of when Yellow Diamond appears, and especially when Yellow Diamond poofs her, like all that subtext is there because these subtle things are reminding you of it.
Yeah, 100% agree. So, I mean, I thought that the wedding in general was just like stunningly done. I really liked they used Greg. I don't know if you noticed, his music is actually an instrumental version of Stronger Than You as they're walking down the aisle. Yeah.
The bit where Ruby walks quicker and he has
to pick up the pace
up the tempo of the song as well. That was very funny.
That is stunning. And I will say as well on that, I think the best element for me of the ceremony, other than I now pronounce you Garnet, which we knew he was going to say because he said that last week. That's still great. But no, the bit that I loved is flowers for you, wedding commander, flowers have been deployed.
Yes.
That whole Peridot bit just had me in
funny.
Stitches. So yeah, there's so much to love. I love as well that like the decorations for the wedding is blue and red, like flowers sort of mixed together. And then what Stephen says about them. In fact, should we talk a little bit about their vows? I mean, Stephen says some beautiful stuff. He refers to Garnet as their love given form, and his little speech is beautiful. But so is both of what the Ruby and Sapphire say. And I love that they both handled their wedding sort of speech, whatever you want to call it, their sort of vows.
Their vows, yeah.
They handled their vows in such a Ruby and Sapphire way. Does that make sense? Like Sapphire went into this like deep cosmic sort of diatribe, and Ruby just kept it really sort of quite simple but very sweet. And yeah, I don't know. It felt like they really represented their characters in their vows, which I thought was really sweet and very well done.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the like when Sapphire started and it's sort of they changed the background. I was like, oh god, like is this going to suddenly get dark? But I thought it was it important to show where they came from, and like you say, just summed them up perfectly as well.
Yeah, I think as well, like in terms of like, one thing I found strange, and I want to ask you about this because I am torn because I'm so glad everyone was there. But does it strike you as a bit odd that like none of these people will know Ruby and Sapphire? Like I know that. Like, how do you explain to the town that these are the two people that make up Garnet? I know we've had a history of this show of the townies just accepting gem stuff, and that's been kind of like a weird running joke a little bit in the show. You know, Steven's like, "Oh, I'm my mom," and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, do you know what I mean? Like that sort of stuff happens all the time. This one seemed like to me like I don't know what I wanted really to happen that would have made me feel a tiny bit better about it because I don't. It didn't bother me enough for it to be a proper issue, but a part of me did go. Did everyone have to have a conversation with Steven before this, where Steven goes, "Oh, actually, Ruby and Garnet, Sapphire and Garnet, oh god, Sapphire and Ruby are two gems that fuse together to make Garnet because they love each other, and it's a whole thing, and it, how the Garnet represents their love, blah blah." And then the person goes, "Oh, okay, I've not met these two people, but I'm invited to their wedding because I know Garnet. Cool, thumbs up." Like, did that have to happen, or was it just that running joke of the town just going, "Okay, I guess"?
I think that Stephen could have explained it off camera, as it were. So I think that element of it's fine. I think the townspeople in general is an interesting element to this episode because they arguably don't need to be there. It's quite nice that you get the plan bit in there and you get Nana's plan, but then you could still do that. Stephen could phone her, or you could do that anyway. There's no actual, like you say, dialogue with the town, although it was nice to see them all interacting, Nana dancing with the security, and then
one of my favourite jokes in the whole episode is Jamie looks at Garnet dancing and is sad. Mayor Dewey looks at Nanopod dancing with his old security team, and then they dance together.
Yeah,
so good.
And that's great. So there's a lot of great stuff with them.
Yeah.
You don't need to have them there, but to be honest with you, I would argue, for just one day, it's all about loves, and it's nice to have them all there, and it's nice that they're involved in the story.
I agree. It's really crazy because there's a huge list on the wiki page of characters that appear in this episode. So many of them have in parentheses next to it non-speaking. Like Dr. Maheshwaran's there, Doug Maheshwaran's there, Onion's there, Sour Cream's there, Vidalia's there, Yellowtail's there, Jenny, Kofi, Kiki, the pizzas, Ronaldo, PD, and Mr. Fryman, Bill Dewey, Buck Dewey, Jamie's there, Andy's there, Cousin Andy, you get a little shot of it, Cousin Andy, Sadie's there, Barbara's there, Mr. Smiley is present. Like, it is really the
Surely
whole
everyone's.
town.
There's no one missing, is there? Yeah.
Not that I can think of. I did look at this list before we started, and I was like, is there someone I'm not thinking of? But no, I think they literally got the whole town, which is incredible, and I think that speaks volumes as well, because I feel like when this show started, I think the running sort of theme was that they had spent years distancing themselves from the town. Do you remember the whole running joke about there used to be a fence here? That they used to keep the town separated from the gem stuff. And what I love about this is it represents the very slow merging of the two. And it started, I suppose, with that episode where the gems had accidentally destroyed Fish Stew Pizza, and they had to make it up to the that family, Nana Foire and Kofi and Kiki and Jenny and stuff. And I think they ended up playing like volleyball on the beach. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that episode.
Yeah.
I think it sort of started there, but this idea that slowly the gems and the town have come together, and this weird notion that Stephen has been the bridge between those two things.
I was going to say that's Stephen, isn't it? That's
100%. As he has come into his own, he has brought the town and the gems together because he is perfectly suited to do it because he's both human and gem.
Although Amethyst, to some degree as well, at least had a friendship with Onion's mum.
Vidalia. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who was also present.
By the way, Onion listed separately from everyone else. Onion's white diamond.
Yeah.
The theory lives.
Theory confirmed. You know what? It's so
That's
funny.
right.
The amount of Onion is White Diamond memes I'm seeing these days is getting really out of hand, but it does make me so happy every time I see it. Everyone seems to
amazing
acknowledge
stuff.
that Onion is not human or gem.
We and presumably it doesn't matter, but we don't get this episode clearly starts with Peridot knowing, so we don't get the Peridot finds out moment, which I don't think we need. Although actually you could have done some funny, because Peridot would in her nature surely like suddenly bow to Stephen, or do you know what I mean? You could have maybe done some amusing Stephen's the highest class of gem possible stuff. Although actually that would slightly counteract her growth as a character because she's moved away from that. Hence you couldn't do a joke where Stephen is adored for being Pink Diamond and then have Peridot fighting Blue and Yellow at the end, could you?
I struggled with that because, like you, you just went through the exact chain of thought I did, which is I really wish I'd seen her find that out and have a moment of her being like my diamond, or getting all flustered, like you're a diamond, like because we saw even I mean I suppose, but then you conflict that because then you've got her arc has been getting away from the caste system of Homeworld, which is clearly broken and bad and very very has a very seriously negative impact on society. And to have her have learnt against it, I suppose you could have had a slip though. The idea that like the shock of suddenly finding out she's befriended a diamond, like I think that moment still would have been potentially really really quite funny. They could have done something light with it, like have her do that for a second and then catch herself and then be like, no, it's Stephen. Like you could do that and still get away with that. I think. So it's being picky. I think this episode achieves so much. There are 2 or 3 tiny things that could have improved it, but that's always the case when you get an episode where everything comes to a head like this. Because I mean, yeah, and like there's a Lapis thing I want to talk about later as well, where there's like one step slightly missing from the story. You know what I mean? And I just think like,
is it Lapis and Bismuth?
Well, Lapis and Bismuth, yes, and then on top of that, like I was torn on whether I needed and whether I will need going forward a moment where we maybe Lapis explains why she changed her mind. What was there a galvanizing moment somewhere out in space where she saw the diamond ships heading to Earth or something and she went, you know what, like I accept that they did enough to set it up in they showed that she had enough doubts about her choices but she was fighting her nature in what was that episode called? Can't go back. Can't go back.
First part of the
absolutely right. They did enough to set up that she had doubts, but I just wonder what was the final nail in the. Did she see the diamonds heading towards Earth?
I disagree. I don't. My assumption is she saw the ships, and I don't think we need to see her realize that. She says it. She says if they're gonna, they're gonna hunt me like one of the crystal gems, I might as well become a crystal gem. I think between that and Can't Go Back, we've had enough, personally, in my opinion. I don't know.
I did say I was torn on
what story you would get from that moment. Like, I don't know how you could integrate that moment into another episode. I think the more interesting Lapis thing to see is a bit more on her and Peridot, a bit more.
Her and Bismuth.
I think Peridot's reaction was right in this episode to just be thrilled that she's back, but maybe we need a moment of you did leave though,
Yeah, a little bit of bitterness or something between them there, like a little bit of not bitterness, a little bit of like you hurt me, you leaving really hurt me.
Yeah,
like I'm learning from Stephen that I need to address these sort of feelings, and you leaving hurt, and I might not need you to apologize, but I need you to know, because I don't think
that interests me a lot more than what you're describing.
I mean, if I've got the choice between those two things, but I'm assuming the other one is coming, whereas the Lapis thing I doubt we'll ever get to, which is why a part of me went, oh, there's just a fraction of a step that I'm kind of missing, like just a little nugget of something there that links the two, that links Can't Go Back to this moment. But if you'd have put that in there ahead of this, then you'd have known she was coming back, so you can't really do it that way. And whether you get to it on the future or not, I'm not sure. I did say I'm torn on it, because part of my brain wants that, like just to fill that tiny little bit of logic, just a little gap in where she was at by the end of Can't Go Back, which is still fleeing and returning here. Just something to settle that for me. But if you'd have put that in...
But it's such a triumphant moment, though.
It's
such
incredible.
a moment of pure joy.
But it comes
It
after...
made me want to watch reaction videos just to see people reacting to that moment.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, I mean, I've not yet done that because I've seen this episode so many times now. This will be like my 6th, 7th time seeing it. This episode is very rewatchable. And that doesn't include the song. I mean, God, I've watched the video, which has just that chunk of the episode in it for only Let's Only Think About Love. Oh, God. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I wasn't shy of triple digits. It's just been on loop, mate. Yeah, it's just been on loop.
Wow.
Like, I'm doing the dishes, and I've just got that video open on YouTube on repeat.
Wow.
I love that fucking song. It's such a good song. But then, obviously, you're right there with the Lapis of it all, as we say, the bismuth side of it too. But I, honestly, I'm kind of glad they were just like they were in the moment, they were fighting because when they deal with that, the same I suppose with the Peridot thing, they will deal with that. But I don't want them to deal with it here because there's already so much going on that you'll never do it justice.
Yeah,
absolutely. It'll be one exchange and it will feel flat. I want a dedicated episode to those relationships now, how they're going to play out. Because I think if you'd have tried to squeeze that into this, it would have felt very quick and short. And let's be honest, she shows back up in the middle of a fight. There's no time to faff about that stuff. And there's also a lot of debate still as to whether that bismuth was our bismuth, but I suspect it was.
Yeah, I think we just need to, we need to see that play out in future. We obviously jump to the Lapis of it all. The moment Steven starts crying is an amazing moment. Because you're just like, oh shit.
Did you know straight away? I did too.
Oh yeah.
Literally, Nadia was nonplussed, just watching it, and I just turned around and went, diamonds. And she was like, really? And I was like, yes, that's the fucking diamonds. And she was like, and then she's like, oh shit, yeah. Because it takes a few seconds for even Steven and Garnet to realise. Because they do it quite cleverly, because they do disguise it as there's a genuinely touching bit of dialogue happening. So for a second or two,
genuinely touching, yeah.
You could genuinely assume Steven is crying. But it's cleverly done to disguise the oncoming storm.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And so let's talk about that element of it then, because they arrive and they don't go for the wedding. Actually, one last thing from the actual wedding thing. Sorry, I've got notes. I made notes on this one. One last quick thing I wanted to talk about before we get to the cluster and that situation. The bouquet being thrown and not coming back down, and then 3 or 4 sort of shots later, it falls down and lands in Bismuth's arms, is one of my favourite visual gags. Full stop. That's so good.
Yeah, because you forget about it. You assume the gag is it going in the air and her being so strong that it's sent into space. You just assume that's the whole gag. So when you then get the bismuth payoff,
it's a good payoff.
It's really great.
Yeah, it's great. Sorry, that's just what I made notes of the things I wanted to touch upon, and since we're moving sort of away from the wedding side of it into more of the other bits now, I thought that was one of my favourite moments. But yeah, let's talk a little bit then, Chris, about how you feel about the way they handled the cluster in this.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was comical. I thought it was funny. It made me want to rewatch the cluster episode to kind of go, well, how exactly did... Because I remember them all forming, and I remember them, forming their own bubble, and that being awesome. And I think I'd have to rewatch it, but as far as I can remember, this ties in pretty well. They formed their own bubble, so they started thinking for themselves, and now they've developed that, and they're continuing that, and they've got that mental link with Steven, so they're on his side, their side. I thought it was a really surprising but completely in context way to handle it, and it was, like I said, it was really surprising. It was oh shit, it's an angry cluster arm. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I keep coming back to with the show, is whenever it surprises me, the overriding thought is, that makes so much sense. How did I not see it coming? How did you... Because often I think the way a lot of TV shows achieve surprise is by doing something you wouldn't think of because it doesn't really feel logical. The real trick is doing something that both surprises you and completely makes sense, because the mastery there isn't the reveal itself. It's how you hide it prior to the reveal without giving it away. And when something is logical, you're more likely to put it together. Do you know what I mean? When something follows a very obvious sort of pattern, so the cluster being on their side should have been predictable when you think about it, because the second it happens, you don't question it. You go, oh yeah, of course. Because Stephen went down, he communicated with it. Once again, solved his problems by talking, and by, communicating and expressing his feelings. He went down. The cluster realized it was a threat to the life above, and he taught it to bubble itself. And as a result of that exchange, the cluster is now on their side. It formed a giant Attack on Titan arm and had an arm wrestle with Yellow's ship, which I thought was fucking awesome.
But not only does that element of it make sense, she says to Stephen, "So you've escaped Homeworld." I love the notion that they weren't going there for Stephen. They just, they've just pissed off with Stephen, pissed off with the whole thing. So they're like, right, let's just destroy Earth once and for all. What's going on with the cluster? Why hasn't it attacked yet? And they go there with the purpose of getting out the cluster,
Yeah, because if they'd gone and been looking for Stephen, you'd have been a bit like, well, how do you know he's there? Like, last time you saw him, he was trapped on Homeworld. Surely you're still searching Homeworld, right? Like, yeah, like, at what point would they ever discover? Because there's no way to trace that he got home through Lars's head. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not.
No, yeah.
He doesn't have to get his passport stamped when he goes through there. Do you know what I mean?
They don't know. They don't know
record.
They don't know that they found that Stephen and Lars even found the off colours. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. So you're right.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't even thought about that, but it makes sense for a bunch of reasons. I mean, I did say to Nadia at the time when it formed an arm and started literally arm wrestling with Yellow's ship, I did turn to Nadia and I just went, "That's fucking ridiculous." Like,
well, it's when it starts thumbs upping. Yeah. It's really like.
The thumbs up is so much too far. Like, it really is. It's like it goes well beyond, like, it goes well beyond logic, and you just sort of go, I guess I'm okay with this. Like, it's so strange.
I am.
Steven's like, thanks, Cluster. Do you want to go back into the center of the earth and bubble yourself? Cluster's like, and it's like, okay. What's such a weird thing? But again, it never goes so far that it breaks the reality. It does teeter very heavily on the line of plausibility and ridiculousness, but it does it in just the right way and gets away with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think so.
Yeah,
I think it absolutely does.
And also, like, having it form specifically an arm to sort of match Yellow's ship to keep Yellow distracted while they fight Blue, I thought that was a really cool way to have the stakes of the fight upped, because the fight almost happens in stages. There's it weirdly actually follows the sort of Dragon Ball Z sort of pattern to a fight, which is that the stakes keep getting upped because the enemy keeps getting stronger. So they're first just fighting Blue, and they ain't doing so well, but then they get powerfuler because they gain a new ally in Lapis showing up. Then they're finally about to be done with Blue, but then Yellow shows up too. And then that ups the villain's power because now there's two of them. So it's the one up thing. It's like in Dragon Ball Z, the villain is more powerful than Goku, but he gets a power up that puts him up with the villain, and the villain gets a power up that puts him. So it's following that very sort of anime style of progressing a fight, basically, because that's what happens in a lot of those sort of like the Shonen Jump like mangas, like the animes. They all follow that pattern of like, the hero can't overcome the villain, and then they can, and then the villain overcomes the hero, and it just goes back and forth.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but what I think my favourite bit of the fight with Blue was, in a way, obviously, other than the Wicked Avengers shots and the triumphant return of Lapis, but the other element of it that I really love is that they kind of don't get the upper hand. The most they achieve there is they knock her over. They don't poof her. They don't actually, and it
absolutely.
takes all their might to even do that. And it
100%.
just makes them as villains seem so powerful. Somehow, that fight scene manages to make our guys look shit hot and awesome, and the villain look terrifying, which is a really hard balance to find.
Actually, that's a really good point, because like usually when you have two characters or two groups of characters fight each other, whoever wins, the other one is going to be devalued in the scheme of the show. But this does manage to make our heroes look like complete badasses, but it doesn't make the diamonds any less scary or feel like any less of a threat.
No.
You're absolutely right. That's actually incredible. Now I think about it, because I don't know how you do that. Like physically, I don't know what the script is doing that makes that work, because theoretically that shouldn't work. Yeah, that's really good.
Everyone is utilised so brilliantly as well. We got Steven on Lion, which is what I was after. Even down to like Peridot shooting the cans. Lapis is obviously using water to fight. Their game is definitely stepped up when Lapis appears, obviously. Like that gives them a real upper hand, going back to kind of how powerful she is. And obviously two awesome moments. The moment where she kind of puts her feelings on them all. And the first awesome moment with that is Garnet walking towards her, and just that refrain from "Stronger Than You" playing underneath it, and her just going, "I'm two gems combined. You know, I can do this.
I'm this many thousand years old. You know, like it's a really awesome speech.
It's a really great speech, and obviously the payoff to that is the Lapis return. And the other one is just when Lapis just wipes a tear away, and just goes, "I've felt worse." Oh,
how good is that? Let's. So first of all, what I love about that is like the final thing that Garnet says before Lapis appears. Not the very final thing, because she says the whole "I'm just distracting you or keeping you here" or whatever, 2 steps, preventing you from going 2 steps.
Says, I'm stopping you taking a step to the right or something.
Yeah. I'm preventing you from taking 2 steps to the right or something like that. But the bit that she says just before that, which is, "And it's my day," I loved so much that in her big epic speech about being thousands of years old. And she ties it beautifully to the fact that Blue Diamond was the diamond that didn't accept her and Ruby's fusion. Like that, that story from The Answer is heavily tied to Blue Diamond and her court. That's where the rubies and the sapphire came from. So they feel very strongly against Blue, because Blue was part of how they got shunted from Gem Society in the first place. It's all wrapped up in that, but it all comes down to Garnet being like, "And it's my day," and I just think that's so good.
And then hitting her like a proper child having a tantrum, just
it's so beautiful.
Punching her,
and for a minute you go, "That's kind of silly. What are you doing? That's not going to do anything." And then you realize that no, it's all part of this. Keeping her stood exactly where she is so Lapis can land. So that's all brilliant. And then you're absolutely right that moment when Blue has a burst of her depression energy, whatever you want to call it, where everyone suddenly starts crying, and Lapis literally just like still stood, doesn't buckle like everyone else, and goes, "Yeah, I felt worse." And it's just so powerful, and it really makes you realize that like she has been strengthened by her experiences. She doesn't realize it, but she's a character that's essentially been tortured over many, many decades. She's had so many horrendous experiences. It's absolutely ruined her as a person, but I think now she's discovering that in actuality, that pain is her strength.
Definitely.
Because what could be worse? You've already been through the worst conceivable experiences. You might as well fight now, because what's left? Like, what more can the diamonds do to you? You know what I mean? Like, and it's that idea that like she's felt as low as a person can feel. She's both tragic and extremely heroic, because she stands up in the face of impending, further impending sort of devastation and potentially a similar fate than what she's already experienced, but she stands up, faces it, doesn't buckle, and is like, "Bring it!" And that is extremely powerful. What a great payoff for this character this episode is.
Oh, stunning! And I love the way she uses her powers. I love the way she collects them all in water. Yeah, I thought that whole thing was
There's a
amazing.
lot of great team powers. My favourite, personally, being Bismuth and Peridot. I like those two as a team anyway because Peridot is metal and Bismuth forges metal. So I think in the future those two are going to be a little team. I like the idea of those two working together, and they even had a specific line.
Well, they set that up.
Yeah, there's a great line where like Peridot's like, "I'll show you. I'll throw me at her again," and Bismuth's like, "I like you, Peridot. You don't quit." And it's like it's really nice. But like I think in general, there's that great bit where like Bismuth launches Peridot right at Blue's eyes, and it's such a cool bit of teamwork. In fact, a lot of the fighting in this
it's more than that because it then distracts her from she can't then see the rest of them coming.
Exactly,
and that gives them the upper hand.
Yeah, working as a team in such a clever way in this episode is like one of the biggest strengths of the action because you just get such a kick out of seeing them all in such sync. Like they're not communicating. It's not like someone's yelling, "You jump there and I'll do this." Like it is just happening. Like this team are so united. They're so in sync with each other now and so determined to help save this planet that they just know exactly what they're supposed to be doing and they're in the right place at the right time every time, and it's exactly that's going to topple this person that is on any one-to-one basis far more powerful, but more powerful than them as a unit, unified with their friendship and strength and like their ability to communicate and like understand where each other's at. But I don't feel like Blue could ever topple that. And I think that's one of the reasons that the fight is so cool. I mean, when Blue first lands and that first like finger sort of touches the ground and then comes up and Blue is stood there, I was just like, oh, they're fucked. They're so fucked.
Yeah.
Like, how do they?
She's
so intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a specific question for you, Dan. I'm going to tease now because looking at the time, I know you wanted to just naturally cut it up, but I just, as you've been talking in my head, I've been like, oh, any minute now, the listeners of this are going to get right. So Dan here, this is where I've cut the conversation in half, and we'll see you tomorrow for So that's everything for this week. So yeah, so that's my Dan impression. How was that?
It's good.
Good. Do you want to? So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to tease. So instead, we're going to cut. We're going to do it. So Dan, I'm going to tease what I'm going to ask you. You line up a question for me. So come back tomorrow, where I shall be asking Dan what he thought of Rose's sword getting shattered, and Connie in that battle in general. What are you going to be asking me, Dan?
Dear, I will be asking you. How we felt about Peridot and Lapis being poofed.
Heartbroken, obviously. Right, so join us tomorrow.
You asked me to tease it, and you fucking... You suck.
Yeah, no, well, it's going to be more
the
than that.
question there and then.
All right, ask me another question then, and I'll remain silent.
Oh dear, I don't know if I've got another question handy.
Oh yes, you do. Come on, man.
I will get your opinion on what might happen next. Now, Blue and Yellow know the truth.
There we go then. So, join us tomorrow for that. I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And we'll see you tomorrow for Reunited Part 2.